Welcome to Cultivating Conversations. It's your host here, Farmer Jazz. Today we have another amazing guest, Samantha Seagaard. How you doing, Samantha?
Hey, how are you?
I'm well. So Samantha, this is for the listeners. Could you give us a little introduction of yourself and what you do?
Yeah, my name's Samantha. You might know me on Instagram as Samantha Seagaard. I am the co-owner of small batch craft cannabis cultivation in Fitchburg, Massachusetts, the Fresh Connection. I actually got my start in New Jersey many moons ago, and then I went to college in Oregon, where some friends from college invited me to come to trim camp, and from there, the rest is history. I went to trim camp in California, saw how, it was, people would just leave their trash. Actually, we were instructed to leave all our garbage behind because the person who owned it wanted to sell the property with all the trash on it, and just shooting guns, starting fires in the middle of fire country, where you're definitely not supposed to be starting fires. It was just the Wild West. People driving up and down the dirt roads in front of our farm with machine guns on quads and stuff. Really sketchy shit. And so I wanted to cultivate my own clean cannabis, because just seeing how these people lived, there was no way they weren't spraying God knows what on it. And I know they were, because they would talk about it. Mm-hmm. And, they would try not to mention it in front of us, but you definitely knew they were spraying. So all of that really led me to want to grow my own. I was also in Portland, Oregon, where there was a huge indoor scene, medical marijuana scene. So after that, one of the girls I went to trim camp with invited me to take over her indoor grow with her and buy her partner out. And that's what I did. So, yeah, I had been involved in the industry previously, but not cultivating, so I really wanted to have control of the product. Especially after I saw the conditions that a lot of this stuff was being grown in, and just how the people were trashing the land and diverting water and shooting wildlife for no reason. The trim camp I went to, they shot a bear because the bear came over because they were grilling steaks every night, wasted, and they would leave all this food out. So just all this stuff that really pissed me off, and I was just if they're doing this, I can certainly do this. So I'm a very able-bodied woman, and yeah, so I got taken under the wing of somebody in Oregon, and ironically, she is originally from Massachusetts, as was everybody basically who ran the farm in Cali. They were all from Massachusetts and New York.
Oh, wow.
So
real masshole energy sounds like it was out there.
Yeah, it was really crazy. There were a lot of drugs, a lot of alcohol. To be honest, some of the people should have smoked more weed and drank less, and it would have been better. But yeah, it was.
That's definitely something I can get with. I come from the same type of background where I kind of got into cannabis myself by just being around individuals that were growing many different ways, and I more so was interested in the medicinal side. As a former athlete, I dealt with a lot of injuries, and I was taking a bunch of ibuprofens and Tylenols to deal with the pain. And I just was looking for something that would basically be more sustainable, and something that was a little more healthier to my body. As an athlete, cannabis really wasn't in my tool bag being an athlete. So it took some time until after college for me to start getting into it and looking into especially CBD. I see that you had some experience with medicinal cultivation. Could you expound on that, and kind of what was the driving force behind you being in some of those scenes?
I really originally definitely started smoking, and I didn't realize this at the time because I was like 13, 14, but my dad passed away when I was 9, and he died a very slow, painful to watch death. He died of being. So it was really, really hard to watch, and I was really, really angry because of that. So in my eyes, I was definitely self-medicating at that point, like on a grief level, because I was so pissed and sad. And that really helped and made me feel better. And I didn't necessarily realize that's what was happening. My mom at the time tried to send me to rehab for weed. I talked to all the counselors. They came back and told her, look, your daughter doesn't have a problem. Like, this isn't that bad, you know. So after that, she kind of was like, all right, well, if they said you don't have a problem, then we're good. So I always kind of used it for, like, the mental aspect of the healing properties of it. And then after high school, my best friends and I went on a road trip across the country, and one of my best friends fell asleep, cruise controlled at 95 miles an hour, and the car rolled 6 times, and I flew out of the car and somehow was standing on my feet alive when they all came out. The car was upside down, and they thought I was crushed under it because the car flipped like 6 times. The chances of getting out, like, and not being completely crushed were crazy. So I think that was my dad watching over me there. But so after that, I broke my arm in that. All the skin on my ass, all the way down to like my bones came off. I had just all these injuries. I had crazy road rash. I went out through face first, so I had all this glass and stuff in my eyelids, and I had to have all these surgeries and skin grafts and all this crazy stuff. And after that, I was in a lot of pain. And I was prescribed all these pills, and what I really preferred was, instead of taking, you know, a Vicodin every 8 hours or 6 hours or whatever it says, is like smoking a little bit and taking maybe half a Vicodin. So not taking as much, and then at the end not even eating any of the pain pills and just mostly smoking. But I mean, I was in a lot of pain, so I definitely needed them to some extent to get through it. It was like the most excruciating thing ever. But then after that, I wound up going to college, like I mentioned, and right kitty corner to my college was a medical marijuana clinic called Mama's. And so I went to Mama's and I got my medical marijuana card for the car accident. And then after that, when I took over the grow with my friend from Trim Camp, I lost my train of thought there, sorry. So
you were talking about school and Mama's dispensary, the medicinal dispensary.
So I went to Mama's, I got the medical marijuana card, and then I wound up, partnering up with my friend Kate from Trim Camp, and Kate and I had an indoor grow where she taught me all about, all the things that you do to grow really high-end medical marijuana, and we sold it to all these different dispensaries. I had 3 different dispensaries tell us that our stuff was the fastest moving flower they had ever had. And then I basically jumped through all these hoops, got my own grow going, tried to get that zone. I tried to get that licensed recreational. They changed the zoning on me, so I had to buy a different property. We bought a different property, and at this point, my mom's helping me get the properties because after many years of her coming back and forth and seeing the plans and realizing like she has a license to do this, this is legal to do in Oregon where she lives. I took her to some of the dispensaries. She saw what was going on, and my brother lived in Massachusetts, and he kept flying in as well. And as I had mentioned to you earlier, we started in Jersey growing, but that was just some plants outside. So under Kate's wing, I learned about growing indoor, which is way more complicated and a lot more nuanced, with crazy details, and you're controlling the environment. So many things can go wrong and do go wrong every single day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I also come from the indoor industry, and that's kind of how I got my foot in the door with cannabis. I was working for a vertical farm called Crop One. We actually had partnered with a company out west. You might know them, Phylos. They kind of do like a 23andMe. Yeah, so they do like a 23andMe, and we did a manufacturing design for one of their cloning facilities, and where they utilized some of the research we were doing with growing lettuce. When you learn how to grow one plant, it's kind of the same thing with other ones, especially when you're growing outdoors. So I do definitely know about the complexities of growing indoors, the nutrients, the temperature settings, how like finicky everything is, and the high levels of technology. Like when you grow outside, it's just a seed, the sun, water, fertilizer. Like, it's kind of real simple, but when you're indoors, you're like, there's tablets, computers, pumps. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. All types of LED lighting. So there's a lot of things that go wrong. So I definitely can relate to your experience.
One more thing I wanted to touch on about the medical marijuana is that I also sought out seeds that were CBD. So we had some high CBD strains that we grew, and people sought us out for those. And we also, myself and my head of cultivation came from Oregon, who also, he's had his medical card since 97, I believe, in Oregon, and he's had a bunch of patients ever since. The way it worked was you had a patient, and the patient got 6 plants, and at one point you could stack cards.
So you were part of like a caregiving program?
Yeah, in the medical program in Oregon before they changed everything. So basically, slowly, Oregon has made all these moves to phase out medical, and one of those big moves was they basically made dispensaries choose if they wanted to be medical or rec. And of course, everybody chose rec because medical, you can only see 1/10 of people.
The market, yeah.
So
you had discussed CBD, and I'm glad you brought that up. Can you kind of explain to the listeners and viewers the difference between like a THC and CBD and what they might be getting from the different plants? And because I'm not too sure if everybody that's going to be watching understands.
So CBD is generally what hemp is known for, but there are cannabis varieties that have CBD in them. So THC is the cannabinoid that people associate with the head high and also the body high, but more the psychoactive part of the cannabis plant, whereas CBD is more of the body high and a lot the analgesic and all these other properties, the anti-inflammatory. Not to say that THC doesn't also contribute to those. A lot of the time, it's really person dependent, just like all medication, but a lot of the time, ratio products are what really, in my opinion, people want, because it's giving them not just the head high. A lot of people straight THC, makes them paranoid. It can lead to anxiety. So having some CBD, CBG, and other cannabinoids balance it out. What I really like is having a good entourage effect, and that necessitates having different cannabinoids in there. So we at the Fresh Connection, we're really into growing different cannabinoids. So like I mentioned, in Oregon, I grew Shark Shock, I grew Critical Mass CBD, I grew Harlequin, I sought out Charlotte's Web seeds. So we have a bunch of CBD stuff and ratio stuff in our arsenal of seeds. A lot of people say, for instance, autistic people tend to really like one-to-ones. So we just have lots of different things. I know Blue Blood was a strain that Zach grew that was high in CBD that he had like some patients just like beating down his door. Even just for the fan leaves, they would juice them. So that's a big thing that people do in Oregon. They juice the fan leaves and they claim that there's like all these medicinal properties in the juice that comes out of the fan leaves, as long as you're not spraying, of course, which we pride ourselves in not spraying our plants. We actually use beneficial insects instead of sprays. So that's another aspect of the medical that, you're really trying to grow a cleaner product that you can stand behind people ingesting. So,
nice.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. And I got one more question that's kind of the medical field. If you could give us like a brief explanation of the endocannabinoid system, because you talked about some of the cannabinoids, but I don't think a lot of people understand or know about the endocannabinoid system, which those cannabinoids work with.
So basically, humans and animals, they're finding, have this endocannabinoid system, and we basically have all these receptors for different cannabinoids, and we're starting to find that, I'm not sure which cannabinoids, and I have looked into it, but I haven't gotten a solid answer. For instance, they've found cannabinoids in breast milk. So we know that the body is making some of these cannabinoids, but not all of them. And then, so people are suggesting that, potentially these plants were designed in some higher form to attract humans because there's something in them that is good for us. So, yeah, it's very interesting. And the fact that our body has all these different receptors for these cannabinoids is very cool. And, I think it's kind of like medicine, we're unlocking which cannabinoids go to what illness. And so that really scares, big pharma and insurance and everything else. So,
yeah, finding a key to some healing going on there, and there's definitely competition now. So we talked about the plant, we talked about the body and how it works with how the plant works with the body, and kind of a little bit about like your early journey into cannabis. Now you're the co-founder of Fresh Connection Boston and the CEO. Can you talk to us a little bit about that venture that you got going?
Yeah, that would be awesome. Thank you. So basically, I started doing the medical marijuana thing in Oregon, and my brother was in Massachusetts. I knew I always wanted to come back to the East Coast. That was always pretty much the plan. And if I didn't, my mom would be very, very upset. So we told her from the beginning, I'll be in Oregon. I'll learn as much as I can about growing. And then I will come back to the East Coast and set up with all this knowledge that I've gained from my experience in Oregon. And my brother went to Bentley in Waltham, so we were watching the news like hawks, and we knew Massachusetts is going to be the first state to go legal. Basically, let's rewind to high school, and this is like 2007 when I'm graduating, and my brother and I jokingly say, if this goes legal, we're going to get involved. And we would say this to people and nobody would believe us, and people would laugh it off, and all of our family thought we were crazy because they're pretty conservative. And yeah, it took a lot to get here. But basically my brother was in Massachusetts, I was in Oregon, and then I started visiting Massachusetts. I met Zach, who wound up becoming our head of cultivation. And when I met Zach, I knew, like, if he's down to come to Massachusetts, then we'll be the perfect team, because he has 35 years experience of cultivating in Oregon and California. He knows HVAC, plumbing, electric, construction, all the stuff we really need. Like, it's not just having a grower, you know, it's like stuff goes wrong all the time. And if your grower can't tell you, oh, there's nothing we're going to be able to do to fix this because the Freon leaked out and the HVAC isn't going to hold pressure and it's not going to pull this humidity out of the air, like, no matter what we do. You know, there are just, like, within our first month of being open, one of our brand new, you know, thousands of dollars HVAC or dehumidifier, but, like, huge dehumidifier went out. And then another one did, like, months later. So if you don't have someone who's able to know, like, oh, that's not just, you know, that's not just an error on our end. Like, something is actually broken in the room. If someone's not there to know that, like, immediately, like, you could have really big problems, especially in Massachusetts, because the testing is so strict. It's one of the strictest in the country. And because of that, you really have to have somebody with boots on the ground who knows what's going on and who's watching your troll master and your pulse and all your numbers, like, continuously, and has alarms on everything in case something's out of whack. So basically, Zach and I started flying back and forth, and Will was in Massachusetts scouting places. We found a place in Lowell. That place got taken out from under us. We thought we were going to do a place in Boston. They wound up doing it without us. And then finally, after flying back and forth tons of times, we found a place that made sense in Fitchburg. And it wasn't even the first building we had looked at in Fitchburg, ironically. But we wound up meeting with all the town people and making sure that they would be okay with it before we even, you know, could put a bid on the building. Like, there's just so many things you have to make sure of before, you know, you purchase a building and then the town says, oh, you can't do this here, you know, that would not work.
Yeah, it sounds like you got a pretty solid team. You've put together a pretty solid team. Does that team, and it sounds like that team kind of makes it easier for you to, you know, work in, you know, you guys are pretty much focused in different areas, but, like, having that knowledge of knowing that, hey, I got a guy that knows HVAC and he's going to know how to keep these rooms climate control. I got a guy that's scouting places. I got knowledge too. And it sounds like that you know, put together a Captain Planet team when it comes to cultivation. It makes it a little easier. Is that the case?
Yeah, definitely. And for our cultivation, it's really small. It's just Zach, and then he has 2 other employees, and they sometimes work full time and sometimes work half time. So and then, you know, our full team is 10 people. So there are about 7 on package and trim, and we all go between trim, packaging, labeling, and then also harvest. So, you know, some words of advice I have to people out there trying to get their feet, you know, into boots on the ground in the craft cannabis is keep it small. Like, less is more. Having less people that you're employing is better. Like, you really got to watch pennies, because every employee adds, you know, thousands of dollars, and it really adds up. That's not to say, like, don't have too few either. Like, I know some people who are trying to do the sales, the trimming, the growing, and go to all the events. Like, the same 3 guys are trying to do everything, and it's like, that's not sustainable.
Yeah, that sounds like a
how do you do that and have a life?
Recipe for burnout.
Yeah, exactly. And so a lot of people do get burnt out because they do that. And the thing is, it's like, I've been in Oregon, so I've basically been, like, training for this. Because, you know, I wound up from the indoor spot, we wound up expanding to 3 outdoor spots. And then we wound up having a giant hemp farm that was like 5 acres. So we had like 12,000 plants at one time.
Wow.
So now having, like, you know, 250 in flower in 2 different rooms, so 500 plants in flower, that's like nothing. So luckily for us, this is like
It sounds like a good situation. You kind of scaled down, so it's
Yeah,
more
we feel.
relaxed setting. Could you walk us through a typical day at the cultivation facility?
Yeah, so a typical day, we start, Zach and the grow team starts at 8 and they work till 4 generally. And it's 3 of them. They go in, they do the watering, they do the pruning. We're very hands on. We try to spend a little bit of time with each plant every day. And that's on purpose. We have small rooms. They're 45 lights. Our room in Portland was 30 lights, so it's not that much bigger than we're used to. And that's really helpful. Actually, Zach's rooms were 50 lights and had more. And so he does that. On my end, I go down, I see what the orders are. My brother does all the sales, so he'll get the orders ready. He emails those to me. I'll get everything ready for everybody. I have to print all the labels. I have to make metric tags. And in our packaging area, we have a couple tables that people are sitting at and trimming, and it's usually between 2 to 5 people. And then we have other tables where people are packaging eighths. And then we have one guy who's in charge of all the pre-rolls, because we just have one knockbox. So we have pre-rolls being made, and we do them in batches of 1,000. And when he's done making them, then another guy will hop on the scales, and the 2 of them will weigh out all the pre-rolls. Then we have to tube the pre-rolls. Then we have to label the pre-rolls. And then we also do a thing called flight pack samplers, which are 6 half grams of 3 different strains, so 2 half grams of each strain. So, like right now, they're putting together flight pack samplers.
Wow. That sounds like you guys run a pretty tight ship, and it sounds like all hands on deck, and it sounds like it's going pretty well.
Yeah.
One of the things that you mentioned is that you guys have a smaller cultivation. As a smaller cultivation and doing small batches of craft flower, what sets yourself apart from the large scale operations?
Well, a lot of things set us apart, to be honest, but some of the key things are that, we have a team who really knows about weed. I've been smoking every day for 20 years, and I really have a pulse on what flavor profiles people like, what might be up and coming, and just we're down to experiment. Like I said to you, we grew the Harlequin, we grew Shark Shock. Like I grew things that weren't high THC, which is generally what people grow to, have higher sales, because I wanted to have the medicinal options for people, and I wanted to have different things on the menu. So like one interesting thing that we tried here in Massachusetts, which I had never heard of anybody else doing, is we grew THCV flower. And what that basically means is it was bred for THCV, not THC. And since everybody is tack hunting and trying to get the highest THC, that wasn't, an easy sell, because people don't even know what THCV does yet. But once you explain it and tell them, oh, this is kind of like a natural Adderall, it's a hunger-suppressing cannabinoid that people in Africa used for generations when they would go out hunting so that they wouldn't become hungry during the hunt. Like, it's really interesting stuff like that we're doing that I haven't seen anybody else doing. And that's from experience in Oregon. That's from living there and knowing, like, this company, Oregon CBD, that I guess people don't really like anymore, but they made all these really low THC genetics that actually came out with no THC, so you could actually grow them and your stuff wouldn't be hot. So the THCV is their new project. So knowing stuff like that, like nobody here would know that, because unless you've had boots on the ground such as yourself in the hemp industry, that's like pretty obscure knowledge. So having people such as myself, my brother, and Zach, who have all been in it for so long and really know what people want, that's very helpful. So we actually have a 200 plus seed library, which our inspector told us is the most different strains that anybody has that he's seen in Massachusetts. Wow. And what that means is that we're always hunting and we're always retiring stuff. So like Jelly Biscotti pancakes, it's a super purple caryophyllene dominant strain. It's like really peppery and umami. And it was our number one seller, but we retired it because when you do stuff small batch and it's limited run, it's gonna sell better, and it's just it gets more attention if people know this is all there is. Like this is the last batch of it ever. Like it's like
gone. You guys got like a limited edition program going on.
Exactly. So that's what we're doing. So we're always hunting through 5 or 6 new strains, and we have like 5 or 6 new strains upcoming, and then we have like 5 or 6 strains we're growing currently. So yeah, it's exciting. We start everything from seed, and then we pheno hunt it in-house. We don't, besides the clones that we came from Oregon with, which I brought in a backpack on the plane, because we had been growing them for years and years, and we knew they were producers. Besides those strains, everything that we have in mass is started and pheno hunted in-house. And another big thing that we do that differentiates is we grow in soil. We're really all about soil and amendments and mycorrhiza and all the beneficial fungi and microbes that are in the soil that you really don't get if you're growing in cocoa, which in my opinion is not environmentally friendly because it's being shipped from India and other very, very far away places. And growing in rock wool, which is, a type of insulation. Should we really be growing plants that we're consuming out of a man-made medium? In my opinion, no. The earth has had soil that has been growing living things for millions of years. I don't know why we're trying to recreate the wheel. I mean, I do. It's so that people can pass microbials and so that it's easier to grow. It's harder to control soil because it's natural. It's batch to batch.
How does your company address environmental issues in cultivation and distribution?
Awesome. So as I mentioned, we grow in soil, and then we try to repurpose the soil and find new people to take the soil and love the soil and use the soil for generations to come. So one thing is growing in soil. Another thing is all of our packaging is either home compostable, biodegradable, or we also use glass. We package everything in glass, so recyclable. And we really go above and beyond out of our way to find compostable labels as well. A big part of the issue is these companies spend all this money on this quote-unquote recyclable or compostable packaging, and then they slap a non-compostable label on it. So once you do that, it's no longer compostable. So really focusing on the packaging and trying to find home compostable and recyclable stuff whenever possible.
All right, thank you for that. It sounds like you guys are doing some good work just to make sure that, you're not adding to a bunch of waste. That's one thing that, me as a manufacturer that I'm concerned about is, you want your brand to be out there on the packaging and stuff, but you don't also want to be that brand who everybody knows you because you're part of the junk that's outside and part of the garbage that's laying on the street. Everybody sees your packaging, and you don't want to be a part of that. And at least know that if your packaging was outside, that it's going to biodegrade and, it'll be gone with the environment and it's going to blend in and it's not going to be like some plastic or something like that. So it's good to hear that you have some of those things on the forefront of your mind. So my next question... Oh, sorry.
To just add one more little thing. So even when we were doing the hemp, you see the hemp farms and they have the plastic mulch layers. So we went out of our way to find organic, biodegradable plastic mulch, which was actually made out of tapioca. So we've gone above and beyond to try to be as environmentally friendly as we can. But there's only so much we can do, especially with the microbials here in Massachusetts. So, yeah.
How do you ensure consistency and excellence in your craft flower from one batch to the next?
That's a great question. So we're actually huge weed nerds, and we have a Trollmaster, a Pulse, and a homemade monitoring system, which was not homemade by us, but by our friend Mike Zartarian, who was our electrical engineer. And we basically monitor the rooms, like, not just at one sensor, but I think we have 11 sensors per room, and that's in the grow room, in both the flower rooms, in the veg room, and in the drying room. So we monitor everything, CO2, temperature, humidity, VPD, light intensity, all that kind of stuff. And also, so Mike, our electrical engineer, who's designed these really cool devices, he's designed their scales and also sensors that pick up all those things that I just mentioned. So we actually have 12 of these scales under 12 of our plants, evenly spaced throughout the room. And we can tell to the milliliter based on the weight of the plant how much water each plant is drinking, because, you know, if you set up an irrigation system, the plants on one end of the system could very well be watering at a totally different rate than the plants on the other side. So we had this system installed so that we were able to monitor the plants and also see. Basically, when you look at a Trollmaster, it's telling you, oh, the temperature of the room is 83 degrees. But it's not telling you that 83 degrees is right where that sensor is. Yeah. And 20 feet away, it's actually 87 degrees. So we basically put all these sensors that Mike, and his company is called it's called Zartarian Enterprise, I think. But basically, we're able to tell that one end of the room, despite the Trollmaster saying that it's even throughout, you know, one end of the room when we first started was actually 10 degrees different than the other end of the room. So through Mike's scale inventions, or whatever the heck they're called, scale monitors, I guess, we were able to we added a bunch of fans and all different kinds of things to perfectly even out the room. So we're really all about consistent, even canopy, and a lot of that has to do with having the environmental controls in the room actually at equilibrium, so they're actually even. And, you know, the exhaust from the dehumidifier that's pumping out hot air isn't creating a hot pocket that's leading to a bunch of mold. So really dialing in the environment is how we originally, you know, that's the first step. The second step is we have an Orange Botanics light box. So it's basically a weed testing lab in a box that we have access to. We use that to do all of our pheno hunting. We take a bunch of tests before we harvest. We harvest to trichome ripeness rather than just cutting stuff down when the calendar says it's ready, like most of these big places. We also do a slow dry, 14 plus days. And then after that, you know, we don't want too many hands on the buds. We chop and we place them on racks so they're hanging and not getting crushed in bins. But I think another part of it is, you know, we have a small crew, so they all see and are able to see, like, what everybody else is doing. So keeping it consistent like that, you know, I can see that if people had two different crews, like a night crew and a day crew, the night crew might be trimming it different than the day crew. So, like, making sure everything's consistent is really about having less hands on everything and just we trim everything. We hold it on the stem. We try not to touch the buds. We really go above and beyond to get the end user as much of the original product as possible without it being a super, we're not like leaving a bunch of sugar leaf on it. Like, we're trimming it pretty tight. And some people have complained about that, but for the most part, people appreciate that. But, it's all to each their own. Some people want a shaggier trim job than we do. So it is what it is.
Yeah, you guys sound like you guys got a R&D lab, and there's a bunch of innovation going on in your cultivation. Which me as an engineer, I'm just enjoying listening to all the different things that you're doing to make sure that you have that equilibrium going on in your facility. Yeah. So I definitely like that.
I gotta be honest, I haven't heard of anyone else going that above and beyond to make sure that it's all in equilibrium. And like I mentioned, we also have the 3 different monitoring systems. So we have the Pulse Grow, which we found off Instagram a long, long time ago and have used ever since. We have the Trollmaster, and then we have Mike's, the Zartarian Enterprises, and now we actually are introducing Agrotech. So we're going to have a 4th one, and that just allows Zach to be able to check them all and make sure they all are saying the same thing, and we're not relying on faulty sensors.
Okay. I got one more.
I'm sure you have experience with.
Yeah. I got one more question on the facility. What innovations or new trends in cannabis industry are you most excited about, and how might they influence your future product development?
That's a good question. I mean, the thing is, we really try to stick to the old school stuff. But I mean, one thing that's really helped us, for instance, is the Futurola knockbox. It's nothing fancy. I bought ours off eBay like years ago for our hemp company. I put it in my suitcase, brought it with me here. The thing is a workhorse, it's like 100 joints at a time, but we pump them out. You have to have those racks, the loading stations, and at $200 a pop, that's not cheap. But we use them every day. We have 12 racks, so we can do 1,200 in a run, and doing more at once just keeps the price down because I don't have to keep remaking labels, and it just keeps things more streamlined doing more at once.
It sounds like the automation is coming to play, and just some of the ease of doing things all at once instead of doing it over and over. So it sounds like some AI maybe be in the future, or
yeah, I mean, I think the new Agrotech, which is the new automated watering system, it's not 100% automated, but it's going to make Zach's life easier to some extent. And so that's going to be great. We really love, as I mentioned, the Pulse Grow monitors. I really love the Outlaw, which is a handheld gun that allows us to scan the metric tags rather than having to log everyone by hand. So that's been really, really helpful because I can just scan and order and know everything's there rather than having to go, okay, this package is there, that package is there. Sometimes it's not that many packages, but when it's 30 packages, it's like hours of your day that you're looking at tiny little numbers. So having something like the Outlaw that you can just scan them all at once and say, oh, they're all there. It takes 1 minute versus 30. It's very helpful.
All right, I got 2 last questions for you, and these are more about you, Samantha. How do you balance the work demands of being a CEO with the passions for hands-on cultivation and product development?
Can you say that again? Sorry.
How do you balance the demands of being a CEO with your passion for cannabis, hands-on cultivating, and product development?
I mean, I basically eat, breathe, and sleep like the business. I mean, I'm just always thinking about it, especially with us trying to get retail, which, knock on wood, I really hope happens, because as I mentioned to you, it's really hard when we're only getting a small fraction of what the retailer is. So yeah, one thing I do hot yoga. I try to do it almost every day, if not like 3 times a week. And that really helps, just like sweating a bunch and kind of trying to not think about anything. I'm trying to read more, so I've read maybe 10 or 15 books this year so far. So trying to read stuff that's off topic often like somehow resonates with whatever the topic is. So always trying to read new things and just be inspired by different things and people, and listening to podcasts while we work and do kind of monotonous stuff, and just trying to always learn more. And then also going over to the hash makers lab and seeing what they're doing and having a say in that. So we found a really great new hash maker, 14 counties, and they're a lot more back and forth than previous extractors who will just kind of take your material and do whatever. Not saying that they all have, but some have. And it's just really great. You know, they'll make one product and then say, okay, do you want us to do this or this with it? So they kind of give us the options, and that's really cool. So right now we actually just had temple balls and rosin made and diamonds and sauce. So I'm really excited for those. I know a lot about extraction from Oregon as well, as I have a lot of friends who do it. So yeah, I have a lot of experience and knowledge in that realm as well, which is why we're so adamant about trimming on the stem with chikamasas or scissors of some sort rather than trim machines, because it really translates to not only the bud but also the hash. And our hash maker, we're fortunate enough to have a hash maker who looks at everything under the microscope afterwards, and so he really appreciates that we hand trim, because you can tell in the hash it's like all full trichomes rather than trichomes that have slits and cuts in them from the trim machine. So yeah.
All right, I got 2 more questions for you, and I definitely enjoyed that share right there. Looking ahead, what are some of the aspirations for the future of Fresh Connection Boston, and how do you envision the company contributing to the broader cannabis community? I know you had already talked about getting a dispensary. Could you maybe explain how the dispensary could help the growth of what you're doing at your facility?
Yeah, so if we were to have our own dispensary, we're able to do more unique niche products that when we're doing it right now, and then we're, you know, when the retailer is marking things up 200 and 300%, it's really frustrating for us as the person who's put in all the effort to make the product. And, you know, we're really small batch, so this stuff, it doesn't yield that much. And so for us to have to make the product and then take all the hit on not making much of the profit, it's like there's so many things that we can't do because we don't feel that we can command enough of the market share, and we're, again, really small. So it's just, it's hard against these really big companies, and yeah.
All right, thank you for that share. It sounds like it definitely could just open up the opportunities for what you guys got going on, because it sounds like you're really creative, and some of the creativity is kind of held back by both, you know, the demand for capital, which is necessary for business, and then also the ability to have your own storefront to maybe get around some of that red tape.
Exactly. And what's really frustrating is that I've been doing this for 20 years. Like, I know what the price is supposed to be, and it's really frustrating when you're dealing with people who are from another industry and they act like they know better and they don't. And you can see it in their pricing and in their sales. And, we'll have one person tell us, oh, this isn't moving. It's like, well, that won first prize in the High Times Cup this year. So, like, maybe you need to rethink your marketing strategy. So there's just so many things that we want to do, and hopefully, if we do retail, we'll probably also expand our grow eventually. But first we started small because we wanted proof of concept. We wanted to make sure there was a demand for our product. And it's something to say, maybe some of our better clients will have a room dedicated to them, and we'll grow certain strains that they want or do something a certain way that they want. So there are things that we can do, but we only have so much bargaining power. Like in Massachusetts in particular, our least favorite word is the word reciprocal, because that's what all the big companies say, is they only do reciprocal deals. They'll only take your flower in if you can take their flower in. And because we don't have a dispensary, obviously we can't take their flower in. So that greatly limits the amount of people who are even willing to work with us. So we hope that if we get a dispensary, more people are willing to even have a conversation with us, because we're able to offer them shelf space in exchange. But what that really comes down to is these people are just growing way too much, and they need to get rid of their product, so that's how they do it.
That makes sense. It's kind of just like forcing their product on you when you're just going to sell your product, and you guys maybe split proceeds, not so much take on more responsibilities.
Yeah, like there are lots of things we want to do, but since we have to sell it to a retailer and won't make that much from it, it's not worth it. So hopefully when we get into retail, we're able to expand and have a processing license. And that's not to make our own hash, because I think the people who are making our hash are very good at making our hash, but that is for us to be able to use our keef and be able to use our keef to make infused pre-rolls, and to also take the hash that they've made back into our facility and be able to roll it into pre-rolls. Because as it is right now, since we don't have manufacturing, we can't take our hash into our facility. It's very frustrating. So
a lot of red tape, it sounds like. So I always like to wrap up the interviews with this last question. I always like to ask the people I'm interviewing to drop a seed of knowledge. So my question is, for aspiring entrepreneurs looking to enter the cannabis industry or follow similar paths as yours, what advice would you give?
What advice would I give is be creative. I feel like a lot of people are trying to reinvent the wheel, and there's so many other things that can be done, not necessarily with the plant, but maybe even with the plant, maybe, art with fan leaves, juicing the fan leaves. There are all these other things that people can do with the byproducts, or even with the photographs. One cool thing that I did a long time ago, and it's funny because there's a huge weed community in Portland, Oregon. But if I go to any weed events, people will no doubt come out of the woodwork and say, aren't you the girl with the weed leggings? So one thing that I did a long time ago was I had a photographer come every week, and all of my everybody thought I was crazy. They said, why are you spending $200 a week having photos taken of the weed? It's black market. What are you doing? But the thing is, now I have all the photos, and I, made them into canvases, which I put up and given dispensaries, and they really love that. I also actually brought a seed back from Amsterdam, grew the seeds out, and then had the macros taken of that and had those turned into leggings. And so wherever I go in Portland, people always remember me for putting the image on the leggings. So it's weird things things like this that people will somehow remember you for.
Wow, it's like definitely a way to use your creativity and make yourself rememberable. I know this will definitely be an interview that I remember, just because,
Thank you.
just from talking with you, it just sounds like even that creative side of yourself with the leggings, it shows in your cultivation. A lot of the processes that you got going on in your cultivating facility, it might go over a lot of people's heads, but myself as an engineer, I'm like, you got it really tuned in, and that's a great way to have some good results and repeatability. It's easy to do something one time, but to constantly and consistently get it right, that takes a lot of what you're doing, and I don't see that much, and I definitely want to give you your flowers on that one. My grandma always told me to give people their flowers while they can smell them, and that's one thing I wanted to do. From listening to what you were talking about, there's a lot of innovation that's going on, and I definitely want to give you your flowers. You got a lot of information. I definitely hope we could stay in contact, because I definitely want to pick your brain and get some of that creativity myself. But this has been a great interview. Thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate your time. And do you have any links, websites that you want to drop so people can know where to go visit you, or any dispensaries where they can go visit visit and not only visit but purchase some of your products?
Yeah, so we have a pretty lengthy list now. We're in about, I think, like 80 dispensaries across Massachusetts. So the easiest way to find us would be going to freshconnectionboston.com. We have a tab for retailers, and we're about to be connecting our product search to that also. So, right now it's kind of difficult in Massachusetts because you can look and find where someone's product is, but you can't say, I really want Moonbow, which is a strain that we brought from Oregon. We got the first drop of the seeds that the breeder ever released. And people love us for that strain. It's not the highest TAC, but people love it because the terps are just crazy. It's like kind of menthol-y and super like basement dank in a really good way. So now we actually have the ability, shout out LinkedIn, thank you Sam Coral, he just a guy on LinkedIn sent me a link, hey, I made you a product search, and now we maintain it, but so now you can actually type in Moonbow and you can find a list of exactly where all the Moonbow is, what item they have, how much it is. So it's really, really cool. And I've been sending that to anybody who sends me a message on LinkedIn, where you can find me at Samantha Seagaard. That's SEAGAARD, or at Samantha Sensi, which is my Instagram. And I haven't been posting on there because of the whole shadow banning thing, but I am always on that account. So if anybody has a question, wants to ask me anything, I'm super reachable at Samantha Sensi or Samantha Seagaard on LinkedIn. And freshconnectionboston.com for the product locator, for right now the store locator, but soon to be the product locator. And I just wanted to thank you so much for taking the time to do this. How ironic that you're in Jersey and that's where I'm headed. So, yeah.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you for coming on. This has been a good episode of Cultivating Conversations.